And I hope everyone had a great weekend with their family. It was Easter weekend. I am joined by my good friend, a huge Noblesville advocate, a small business owner herself, Kristen Boice with Pathways to Healing. Kristen, thank you again for joining me on this Mental Health Monday. Yeah, well, I know we had quite a few people tune in. What was that? A little over a week ago when we did our first session on mental health, and you're actually the one who pitched the idea of doing kind of a regular mental health check-in, which I think is awesome. And so I appreciate your time, really. So just to we can kind of go over some of the things several days ago, but I know how you want us to start, because I always think about you when it comes to stressful moments in my life, because you are always reminding us to breathe. So why don't you take a second and go over that breathing exercise? And if you are listening today or watching on Facebook, we want you to join in. I don't care how goofy you think it looks. I'm going to get goofy with you here. So let's take a moment and breathe. Also, while you're thinking about it, make sure if you have some questions that you take a moment to type them into us. We love to answer some questions live here on Facebook, but let's breathe first. And Kristen, I'll pass it over to you to lead us in that exercise. Yep. Sorry, Rosie the dog is here. Yeah. I feel relaxed. Thank you. I feel that it's amazing what one big breath will do to calm you. So thank you so much. It looks like we're having maybe some audio issues on Kristen's side based on some of our concerns there. Hopefully folks can hear me. But Kristen, thank you for walking us through some of that exercise there. Let's talk a little bit. So it's a little bit of a gray Monday. We had an awesome weekend of Easter. There may be some folks, we kind of were hyped up a little bit to celebrate Easter in our own way for those that celebrate this weekend. And then today we get to a Monday. It's kind of gloomy outside. Can you talk a little bit about? There's Kristen's back with us. Welcome. There we go.
That was interesting. Do we need?
There
to
we go. She's back.
Again?
Modern technology. Here we go. So let's talk a little bit about how it's a gray Monday outside. How can some folks process? There's still at least another week of hunker down Hoosiers that Governor Holcomb's laid out. So we're kind of gearing up for some e-learning is back in session starting tomorrow. So give us some top 5 or 2 or 3 tips maybe to help us get through this gray Monday.
Yeah, and let's first acknowledge what you're feeling. So the first thing I want to do is acknowledge what you're feeling, because if we don't do that, you're going to feel disconnected. You're going to be reactive. You're going to feel stressed and anxious. So number one is breathe. If you missed the breathing, you didn't hear me. You're going to breathe through your nose, out your mouth on a regular basis. That's number one, because if you're not regulated, you're going to lose it at times. And we've got to stay regulated. So number one is breathing. Number two is acknowledging the feelings that you're having. And I want to walk through some of those feelings, because we're going through a collective grief right now. And that's really important for us to walk through that. We have kind of the 5 stages of grief, and this is not in a linear order. So it doesn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It can jump around. So the first one we have, and this comes from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and the reason I'm bringing this up now is because we have to acknowledge what's going on the inside. We need to do that for ourselves, for our partners, for our children, for our friends. If we don't do this, we are going to stay stuck. You're going to hyperfixate. You're going to feel like you're looping. You're going to feel trapped. So the first thing is we got to acknowledge denial. So sometimes we're going to want to go, oh, this isn't a big deal. This will pass. And we deny what we're feeling. We deny the reality of what's going on. Secondly is anger. It's natural to feel angry that we can't do what we normally do. We're kind of frustrated. We can't go out and be with our friends or our family, even on Easter. So that we've got to acknowledge the anger that's associated with this. Bargaining. We want things to be different. So we're like, if we just do this, if I just go out for a little bit, it'll be okay. And so we start minimizing and bargaining. Depression. We're seeing a lot of depression right now, and we have to connect to the sadness that we feel right now. If we don't connect to the sadness, you're going to feel hopeless and helpless. It's important to acknowledge those feelings. Acceptance. Acceptance is when we go, okay, this is the reality. This is kind of where some people are right now. We flip between all of these. Right now, we're trying to accept the new reality of where we are. And when we do that, we can move through those emotions and get to the other side. And then the last new step is finding meaning. We're not there yet. It's hard to find the meaning in what's happening. So people want to jump to that. Well, I'm not finding the meaning. That's because a lot of times we're not in the meaning. So we have to acknowledge the feelings. The third thing is moving some, where we really kind of feel like we can get stuck. So moving, if you're doing some yoga at home, if you take a walk outside, I know we need a social distance, and you can still keep your 6 feet. Movement is really important right now to move those emotions up and out of the body. So I recommend moving. Journaling. I know it sounds cliche, and I'm like, journal. Nobody wants to journal. I'm like, and it helps you process. This is my journal. I am enough. And I keep it with me and write it out to get it out. We have to write it out to get it out. We have to be processing what's happening. Otherwise, we're going to be numbing with alcohol, Netflix. I'm saying a little bit, but not, we're going to an extreme sometimes. And we want to shut down and move away from what's really going on. So we want to get away from the numbing. We want to get into the feelings, and movement is really important with that. And the last thing is connection. We need to be connecting on FaceTime, Zoom. The Zoom calls are abound. Google Hangout. There's a lot of ways to do that. Seeing people's faces right now is really important. Hearing voices is very comforting to people. People that you miss, reach out to them, FaceTime them, connect with them. We're missing connection, and this is another recommendation I have.
That's awesome. So one of the things I really take away from that, Kristen, is to acknowledge each step in the process. I think I admitted last time we were together that I tend to rush to the end result. I'm a fixer. I'm a instant gratification type person, which is a struggle in government. Side note, but I will say, so it sounds like you're saying we need to acknowledge each one of those steps in the grieving process, not try to rush to the very end.
Correct. If we don't do that, you will be stuck. You will not feel like you're able to see the other side. You won't be able to move through it to get to the meaning. And in order to get to the meaning, you have to connect to the emotions. And people are like, there is neuroscience based in connecting to those feelings, feeling them, releasing them. And when people want to go, be productive, go, we can't do that. If we're in grief, productivity. I don't feel motivated. I feel stuck. I feel sad. In order to get, that's why I want to kind of make that go away, because it's creating shame for people. It's creating, I'm not doing it right. I'm doing something wrong. Why don't I feel like, well, look, they got the perfect yard. They were out there all weekend getting their yard all perfect, and I've done nothing. I want to go, it's okay. There's not a manual for this. We've never done this, at least in our lifetime. And so what we have to acknowledge is there's feelings associated with this.
And one of the things that really struck me was on the topic of connecting. One thing that I do on a daily basis is try to make a list of 4 or 5 individuals that I haven't spoken to in a long time. Maybe they're in a high risk category during this time, to just call and check in. And I know I have some friends' parents that live down the street that I just picked up the phone a few weeks ago and called. And that has been a really fulfilling time for me, because it's allowed me a few extra minutes to connect with those that I haven't talked to in a long time. And I think I sometimes might not think that's important, but the impact I had on those people that I made a phone call to was instrumental to their day. So I think, again, thinking about what you can do for others during this time will also give you some purpose during this time.
For sure. There's nothing more powerful than opening your heart up and saying, I see you. Hey, how are you doing? And doing a check-in. That's the one thing, as we're all sharing this experience together. And when we check in with each other and tell the truth about how we're really doing, and then we can acknowledge that is so healing and so helpful for you and the other person. So I love that you're doing that.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, I want to remind any viewers to take a moment, say hi to us if you like, write a question. I know we have Mickey with Gingers, I'm a huge Gingers fan, is on. Dan, Patrick Probst, Mark Boice, I've heard of him before. He's listening. Robin, Noble Coffee and Tea, all those guys, Mr. Laird, Kevin Callstead. Thank you guys for chiming in and joining us today. Again, I'm here with Kristen Boice, having a Mental Health Monday here in the city of Noblesville, checking in on our citizens, on our friends, on our family, make sure we're focused on the positive during a really, really difficult time for so many. So let's transition for a second, Kristen. I want to talk about 2 different groups of people. One being kids. We are going in tomorrow, going back to e-learning. I know my 9-year-old is just thrilled, not really, about this. So as kids gear up for it, there's a lot of pressure on them. There's a ton of pressure on parents who are maybe working from home, trying to do their job, but also try to teach a topic that they haven't learned. Whoever came up with this simple math, whatever, all this stuff that we're trying to teach our kids to move the curriculum along. What advice do you have for kids and parents dealing with e-learning this week?
Yeah. And I want to acknowledge those teachers out there that are working so hard, because they put in blood, sweat, and tears trying to transition to online platform, and all the administrators. So thank you for the hard work you're doing. I want to acknowledge that. And I want to acknowledge the parents and the grandparents that are spending their time trying to help their younger ones. The first thing I'm going to go back to is stay regulated, because if you're not regulated and you lose it, the high centers of the brain are going to go offline. So they're going to go into, if you go into fight, flight, or freeze and anxiety and frustration, which is normal, you're going to get frustrated. Acknowledge that. If you do, your child is immediately going to go to that brain stem, that fight, flight, or freeze, and no longer be able to process what they're trying to process in order to learn. So the first thing is, you got to stay regulated. And I know it's hard, and that's through the breath. And it's through so if our inner child wants to come out and have a fit and like, which is easy to do as parents, then what's going to happen is you're modeling what it looks like to not be able to calm yourself down and regulate and learn through it. And I recommend parents walk away for a minute if they can, to get themselves grounded by doing that. Feel your feet on the floor, get into your body, and breathe. And if you need to take a lap around the house, and they go, what are you doing, mom or dad or grandma or papa or whatever, you're going to say, I'm rocking, I'm calming myself down. I'm not going to be able to help you if I can't get myself calm, because I see how stressful this is for you and me. Number 1, that is, if I can teach you nothing else during this time, that's it, is to get yourself in a calm place. And that's super hard for all of us to do.
Easier said than done. What about those kids that are listening right now? There might be some elementary school kids, some middle school kids, some high school kids. They're maybe in a dark spot. Maybe they're really struggling going back to school this week, because they are going back to school, but not really going back to school. And if I'm a high school senior, my prom has gotten canceled and my graduation's in flux. advice for them on how to deal with these tough times?
Yeah, I think the first thing is knowing, yeah, you're going to have grief because this is for those seniors. This is the last. There was the last prom. There was the last game. There was the last, marching band event. There was the last show choir. There was the last championship and last prom, last homecoming. And I think when we can acknowledge that, yeah, this is so hard, this is sad. And again, those stages of grief, and say, it's okay to let those feelings out. Give them permission to have their feelings. This is critical. Instead of going, well, it's all going to be great. And we can't get to that until we get through those feelings. So it's okay to let it out. Write it out to let it out. And maybe they're not ready right now. Maybe they're in a different stage, and that's okay too. Say, if you want to talk, I'm available. Get on the horn with some friends. I think this is a great time for those. And not everybody's going to grieve the same way. So I want to acknowledge that. So some people are like, well, I'm fine. And the other person's like, I am so sad we're not going to prom. And I don't get to wear my prom dress. And I don't get to do the whole experience of going to dinner, and graduation parties I know are getting canceled. And they're having to do them on Zoom. They're having to do them on FaceTime. They're trying to come up with creative ways. Let's honor and celebrate the seniors by putting things out on Facebook, social media, having some hangouts, some group friend hangouts to say, how you doing? And some might be okay, and some others might not. There's no right or wrong way to feel right now. So if someone else doesn't have the same feelings as you, it's okay. It doesn't make you wrong or bad or something's wrong with you. It just means that's where you are in your process, and it's okay to have your feelings. That is critical right now. Processing the loss, processing the lasts, so important. And if we don't let them have space to process and we want to put a pretty bow on it, you're going to skip steps, and they're going to feel stuck. They're going to feel trapped.
So we had a question here asking about grief talks. Any suggestion on where folks can find some resources surrounding grief and where they could have like community sense of a grief talk? Any advice on that?
Absolutely. Grief.com. David Kessler, I took his training a couple months ago. Like, what were the chances of that? He has free groups on grief.com. Here's his book. This is his newest book called Finding Meaning, The Sixth Stage of Grief. We're not there yet, but it's an excellent book. Any of David Kessler's book, he wrote several books with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who came up with the 5 stages of grief. And he asked the family, the Kubler-Ross family, for permission to come up with the sixth stage, which is finding the meaning. So his website is filled with resources and free tools, free groups. So grief.com is my recommendation. Also, we're starting some teen groups at Pathways to Healing Counseling. That's another option for those seniors that want to process together, and a facilitated group.
Sure. All right, let's pivot a little bit off of seniors and students to senior, as in senior citizens, if you will. Those maybe in a high-risk group, 60 and up. Some folks are maybe live by themselves, maybe live in an area that might be more isolated. A lot of them have been tuning into this conversation, which is awesome. Give some advice to that group of people, because again, I know a lot of them as grandparents are jumping in to help out during e-learning. I know my mom is now teaching. She's a 38-year retired French teacher, is now teaching 2nd and 4th grade topics to help out. So give some advice for that senior community that they're going through. It's an all hands on deck approach here. What advice can we give to them, Kristen?
Yeah. First, I'm into acknowledgement. We need to acknowledge their feelings and acknowledge the loneliness that they feel, because I know that's the theme I'm seeing across the board, not just with seniors, but that is one of the pieces that I'm finding is the loneliness. And reaching out to them, the more you can connect and acknowledge what they're feeling, the more it's like they get to take a breath and feel seen and understood. I love that your mom is helping. That is one of the most helpful things. If we can plug them into, hey, could you help, get on Zoom with, the 5-year-old to help them with ABCs. I'm making this up, but you get the idea. They get to participate. They get to feel like they're involved and they're wanted, and they are seen for the gifts that they have. And I think that can be really helpful to anybody, parents, grandparents. Get them involved. Give them help, let them know what you need help with, and then ask them, what do they need? I love asking people, what do you need? And sometimes we don't even know. We're like, I don't even know. And that's okay too. It might just be, I just want to talk. I just want to see your face. I just want to hear your voice. Asking people what they need, no matter what age they are. Now, the littles are kind of hard, but this is a question I recommend asking on the regular.
Yeah. I asked it this morning, and my 3-year-old just wanted jelly beans. He needed jelly beans. So no, but I get it though. Just asking the question. People ask me around the office all the time, "What do you need?" And I don't even know what I need right now, but I appreciate you asking whether I need something or not. You know what I mean? So just the ask is hugely helpful. I think that's a great way of putting it. So I know there's a lot of questions coming in here. I had a few this morning that I thought to myself that I wanted to ask you about specifically. If you have a friend or a neighbor or a family member that you suspect may be struggling, mentally struggling, really in a dark place during this time, how do you have some advice on how to broach that topic with them? I know that's tricky. I love awkward conversations, but I know a lot of people don't love awkward conversations. So what advice can you give as we need to approach our friends, neighbors, coworkers, anybody we think might be struggling with some mental health issues right now?
That's a great question, because a lot of people are. First is asking one, how are you doing? And they could give you an answer that's, I'm fine.
Fine.
Yeah. And I go, no, how really are you doing? It's okay to tell the truth. It's okay to have your feelings right now. I know this is hard, and it's normal for you to have these feelings, because we have a lot of shame in how we feel like, I'm defective. I shouldn't feel this way. It's not that bad. And we minimize instead of feeling safe enough to tell the truth. And when we can tell the truth, so if I can create an environment where I'm empathically, non-judgmentally holding an empathic space for somebody, they're more likely to feel safe enough to tell me the truth. So it's asking, really, how are you? It's okay to have your feelings. It's hard right now. It's lonely right now. There's a lot of grief right now and loss. It's okay for you to have your feelings. And if they say, yeah, I'm really struggling, I say, tell me more about it. What are you struggling with? And they'll say, I don't know. I just miss my family. I feel like no one cares about me. I feel like I'm over here by myself and I'm all alone, and I'm afraid. I'm afraid something's going to happen to me. I'm afraid something's going to happen to my, I don't know what the future holds economically. I'm afraid. You go, oh, I get that. That makes sense that you feel afraid. If someone needs help, let's say they do legitimately need some help, there's some resources out there available, and I'd like to share those. So if someone needs help, we have we have Prevail. So if there's domestic violence, we know in the community, Prevail serves that emotional abuse, physical abuse, any kind of abuse. The number there, it's a 24-hour crisis line, is 317-776-3472. And it may be you getting on the phone as an advocate for your friend, your family member, and calling them, and they will walk you through what to do. You can't rescue somebody's. That's the hard part, unless they want to do that on their own. If someone's feeling suicidal, there's a suicidal prevention lifeline. You or the person you're helping can call 1-800-273 8255. That's 1-800-273-8255. We also have text to connect. So you text 741741 and you type the word connect, and they will help you, plug you into resources. Community North is also open. So if you need to go inpatient, if someone's definitely suicidal, and then you can do a wellness check. You can call 911 by doing a wellness check. If someone says, if someone is suicidal, you need to ask the question, are you suicidal? They may or may not tell you the truth. And that's a scary question for people. They feel like, I don't want to plant an idea. If you're not planting an idea, the idea is already there if it's there. Are you feeling suicidal? Do you have a plan? Do you have means? Do you have a timeline? If the answer is yes, then we need to call either 911 or we need to take them to Community North.
And I think one of the steps as a community we can do is acknowledge that this is a real situation. We have seen an uptick in domestic violence calls to 911, to suicidal calls to 911. I pledged from day one to be a very transparent person in this conversation. Thus why I'm open to, you and I had a conversation about a year ago about mental health and being open. And you said, if you're willing to talk with others about it, are you willing to, this is great advice for anyone. If you're going to ask friends about their thoughts, and if they're scared, be willing to share your thoughts, during this time, but be willing to share your anxieties, your fears during this time too. That will help put people at peace. And I feel like we've seen somewhat of a calming effect by us being open as leaders to talk that it is a real situation. So I appreciate you helping us lead that conversation along. I also had a question about men in this situation. Men tend to be very prideful individuals. And I thought about this morning. How do myself as a male approach maybe a male friend of mine who will quickly brush off an answer with "I'm fine" or "I'm great," or we have a very prideful sense about ourselves. Do you have any advice for kind of helping people that don't necessarily want to talk, and maybe they're not just males, maybe females as well, but men in particular, how to get them to open up about their feelings during this time?
First, I want to acknowledge that what you just said about your own vulnerability. Honestly, that you being vulnerable in this work that you're doing and leading that way invites other people to tell the truth and not hide or minimize what they feel. It is the path. Authenticity and vulnerability is the path to true connection and the ability to be seen and feel safe enough to tell the truth. So one, I acknowledge you and I want to say thank you for doing that and continuing to do that. That is so important. No matter who you're talking to, what the gender is, that you are showing up with all your parts, your feelings, your vulnerabilities, and we can change the dynamic that is going on right now. This is a time for awakening. It's time to wake up, deconstruct, and stop hiding and start creating safe spaces for ourselves and others. So one is vulnerability. And two is acknowledging some of the defenses that we've all learned. And I think men in particular have this pressure to take care of, to fix, to make it all better. And when we can say, hey, I see you, I'm in it too. There's so much hard right now. And I want to say it's okay for you to have your feelings. This is not typically how men talk, right? When I say it's okay to have your feelings, because we're like, we're strong, we're tough, we got this. And this is a time to disrupt that. This is the time to change the conversation around it. And you showing up with your emotions and you being true to yourself and showing up with all your parts helps disrupt that. Now, we've conditioned men and women in a lot of ways into a lot of defense mechanisms, right? Don't show your feelings. Don't be a crybaby. Shake it off. Toughen up. And I think those are messages that do a disservice that men tend to feel like I gotta push that down. I gotta make that go away. That's weak. And I think that's what we're trying to disrupt with now showing up with a different paradigm in the world. Those don't serve men. That's why depression and suicide are high, because they're not allowed, so to speak, to come out with and have their own feelings. And I want to change that passionately for the world, for our community, to say we're going to be in a community where we're going to come and say, I'm having a hard day. I'm having a hard day. I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling sad. And that we can go, hey, I get that. It's okay. Let it out. That makes sense. Yeah. That's powerful.
Yeah. Well, it's important to remember that we're all just human, right? And this is uncharted territories for so many of us. So we have to be willing to be open and honest with that conversation. And I would challenge, husbands, talk to your wives talk to your husbands, talk to your spouse, their partner, whoever it may be, to do a checkup on your own and in your house, and know that this topic is not above anybody else. We know that depression, anxiety, loneliness does not discriminate, especially in times like this. So acknowledging that is hugely important. So I appreciate all those, even people who have kind of shared their feelings in this chat right now, Maggie Owens and others who have opened up and talked about, the importance of being honest. People, Tanya talking about grieving the loss of her own children and now being very lonely. Not only is this a tough time because of the circumstance, but life, as I've told you, life's hard, period.
It is.
Life is hard on sunny days when there's not COVID-19. So add gray skies and COVID-19 and life is really tough. So acknowledging that and know that we are all in this together. We're all going through this together. It's it's a very difficult time. So I thank you so much for joining me today, Kristen. These are incredibly great topics to talk about. Do you have any parting thoughts before we
Yeah, I
close
do.
out?
A couple of things. I want to acknowledge everyone's pain and being vulnerable to share it on the chat. I didn't get the chance to look at all those, but I want to thank you for your vulnerability and being real, and not because we feel like, well, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to come across as XYZ. And when we say, you know what, I am, somebody else is going to come on and go, oh, thank you for sharing that. That felt really helpful. So thank you for your vulnerability and sharing. A couple of things I want to give as parting ways. One is I want to give you the permission to have your feelings, the permission to let it out, and the permission to say it's okay and process through it. Breathe. We talked about journaling. We talked about connecting with friends. I really want to equip you on ways to handle this, because that's what we're not talking about right now. And so that's hopefully every Monday we'll come on and we will give you some ways, some coping strategies, and have real conversations to say this is hard, and we're going to acknowledge it. We're going to process it, and we're going to be in this community together. We're going to do vulnerability, and we're going to get through this together. And I do mean that. We will. If you need help, reach out. I know there's wonderful therapists right now that are doing telehealth, teletherapy. Pathways does it. There's tons of wonderful therapists in the community. Reach out. Don't be shy. This is the time to say you do matter. You are important. You are worth it. This is the time where we're going to come together and we're going to love and support one another, even if we have differences. I know that sounds hokey pokey, but at this point, we're all in this boat together. So let's come together. So I thank you for just showing up today, and I hope this is helpful. Let us know in future Mondays what else that might be helpful to you moving through this.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. As you said, we're going to join you every Monday while this goes on for some mental health Mondays. Kristen has offered her time to come and be a part of that. I appreciate that. I appreciate everyone who joined us. I know people joined us not only from Noblesville, but I see a friend of mine from Texas who jumped on today too, which I'm so glad and appreciate all those who opened up and shared their feelings. Please know from Noblesville City Hall, your health and safety is our number one priority. We're going to continue to communicate with you just even beyond mental health, but ways that the CDC and the state are asking us to make sure that keep you safe. There's been a lot of questions about opening up our economy, and we will certainly start to think about that here in the future and do that in a very safe way, because your health and safety is our number one priority. But now is the time to dig deep. Now is not the time to loosen the reins on this conversation, to maintain our social distance and keep our community safe. So thank you again, Kristen. I'll look forward to seeing you for our next Mental Health Monday, next Monday at 11 a.m. Please tune in, invite your family and your friends, and offer up any questions in the meantime if you have them. But thank you, Kristen, and everyone have a great Monday in the city of Noblesville. See you later.
Thank you.